Hi, Nisha. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for inviting me for this. I'm Nisha, a French and English language teacher, trainer,
Mhm.
and a dancer and an avid reader.
Yes, exactly why we're talking today. I would have loved to have this session in your parents' library, but with that lovely backdrop
Yes.
behind, I'm going to start with the fact that you're a language teacher. So, as a language teacher, we see firsthand how people relate to reading. We often struggle with it. So, what's the most common thing that you have noticed that people get wrong about the whole practice, the activity of reading?
I think that there are two different things there. One is that reading for a lot of people is automatically, and especially in India, is automatically associated with studying, and therefore is something that is uh, forced upon you,
Mhm.
and therefore something that is necessarily boring.
Yes.
And so, this entire perception of reading as being something, oh no, this is something that's good for you, you must do it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is one of the things that prevents people from reading very often. And so, I think that's a big mistake to make. And the second is to say that um, even if I do read, I need to understand every single word on every single line. And that's the only way that I can proceed with the book.
Yes.
And that's not true because we're capable of understanding things even without understanding every single word.
Word. In fact, that's kind of what I often tell people that there is a difference between reading for comprehension and for answering questions and reading for just the experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that largely, like you said, people don't end up reading because nobody's reading for experience anymore. Or are you?
Exactly. Reading
Very
for
few people are,
pleasure. Yeah.
yeah, reading for pleasure. That's true. Yeah, we are still reading for the experience, but yeah, that's very rightly said that it's kind of forced down on us, and we think that we have to understand each word. That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
So, as an avid reader, would you say that there is a particular kind of book that you enjoy more, that you read just for the pleasure? And something that you'd read because you want to, I don't know, learn something, improve yourself. I don't know if you do that. In fact,
I admit that I do less of reading for improvement
mhm.
because I like reading for the pleasure of reading itself. If
Yes,
it, I think that in any case, whatever you read, it improves you in some way or the other. So
very
a
true.
self-help book, sure, it's some people's cup of tea, but not really mine.
Mhm.
Whereas I would admit that my preferred genres are romance, but not romance where it's just boy meets girl, girl meets boy, and they fall in love and happily ever
Mhm.
after. But romance with some kind of a story attached to it,
Mhm.
um, and or else mystery, detective fiction, things like that. I
Mhm.
enjoy detective fiction, even something that everybody knows, is Agatha Christie, for example, or humor with P.G. Woodhouse.
Mhm.
Classics, absolutely. But also, more and more, I'm discovering my sister's a children's author, and so uh, I'm discovering Indian authors for children,
Mhm.
thanks to her. And so many different kinds of writing that unfortunately we didn't have when we were children.
Yes, exactly.
So I
Yeah.
think that's a new, even though it's not one genre, I think it's a kind in general, Indian
Mhm.
writing in English,
Yes.
which I enjoy more and more.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's right. That when we grew up, it was, I mean, when anybody talks about children's literature to me, the first thing and the only thing that comes to my head is Enid Blyton. And then people are like, no, no. And then they list all these authors, and I'm like, oh, who are these? Where did they come from? I mean, to
Yes,
me, literally,
unfortunately, yes.
yeah. I say Enid Blyton, and then I say, yeah, and then this is one author I know. She's my friend's sister. But beyond that, there's a whole world out there. That's very true. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, of course, you would recommend Varsha's books, but is there some book that you would recommend in general, like an author that you've discovered recently? In your experience, and I think especially since Varsha does these workshops and you teach languages, because you've taught English as well and you teach French. Do you think that there is a gap in the way reading is taught, and what should be changed in that, in schools perhaps?
So in schools, I think that reading needs to be taught as, oh, it's to come back to our first question as well, as something that is not just to something that's useful to you, but something that you could enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you don't enjoy a certain kind of book, but you could try another one and not reject the entire act of reading
Mm-hmm.
just because you haven't liked a particular author or a particular
Yeah.
book. It
Mm-hmm.
might be that author and you, it might be the point in time that you're reading it.
Yeah.
And it could be so many different factors that affect the way you've uh, accessed that book,
Mm-hmm.
that I think we need to be, and for that we need to have teachers as well who are more open to reading, to trying out new things themselves,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to encourage children to read.
Yeah.
And I think it's as much for children as for adults that it's important to say it's not just because it's good for you. Sure, it helps you improve vocabulary, it helps you in different ways, but it's also just fun.
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting. I often think back to my school did some things very differently from other schools. And
Mhm.
we had every week we had two classes. One was rapid reading, which was a bit bizarre because there was no rapid reading involved. There was a text we had, and we read it in class. We literally read it aloud. So it was more like reading practice almost, or
Yes.
elementary practice. But the class was called rapid reading. So we ended up reading a novel per semester, because every week we'd
Mhm.
come and we had to pull out a book and then somebody had to read out like a page, 2 pages. We essentially read together and it was a read aloud session. And of course, every week we had a library period in which they actually didn't tell us what to read and what to do. So there were some kids who'd be reading encyclopedia. Others, like me, who'd go off to read a novel. And there was a novel that I invariably ended up picking up a novel and then borrowing it that day. So I feel that those are things that are no longer done in schools. And, you
I
know,
don't know if library period exists anymore, but it's true that that's what helped me discover things as well. We
yeah,
had the same. We had just, I think we had one cupboard which was not allowed unless you got special permission
yeah, yeah.
from the teacher, from the librarian. But
Mhm.
other than that, we had in one of the, I think when I was in the seventh or in the eighth standard, they had a book review competition. And I think that
Yeah,
encouraged us to read more as well,
yeah,
because it was both the number and the quality of book reviews that were criteria for the final prize and all of that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, small things that I hate the word, but
Motivate
gamify. Motivate, yes.
gamer.
Motivate is better than
Yeah.
gamify, yes. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, yeah, to come to my final question today, as I've told you, Be a Reader is built around the idea that curated, guided reading can unlock the curiosity about a book and can encourage people eventually to um, resume reading if they've stopped reading, or maybe discover the joys of reading and of literature. So, if you were to recommend any one kind of text to people who don't read enough or who have forgotten how to just enjoy the act of reading, which text would it be, or what kind of text would that be?
I think it would be something that incites you to think about what could happen next.
Mhm.
And so look forward to the the continuation of the story,
Yeah.
and to say, oh, this is fun. I want to know what happens to this character
Mhm.
or what happens next. So it could be, I would say, something magical or fantastic for one. That's one possibility,
Mhm.
because it's something that is popular today. Whether or not J.K. Rowling is, Harry Potter still is. Whether or not it's the best is subjective, of course,
Yes.
but it's something that makes you want to read. I mean, whether it's magic in terms of Enid Blyton and the faraway tree and all of that.
Yeah.
It's something that makes you want to go ahead and say, oh, what happened to these characters?
Yes.
And another kind is just something that is, um, for me, something that would be interesting is also something based on a real person or a real place. So it could be historical fiction.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be non-fiction, but based on someone I know or I've heard of, and some place that sounds exciting in some way or the other.
Yeah, so
I think
basically
that would be
something
great.
that fires our imagination and gets us curious. Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Nisha, for this. I look forward to sharing Be a Reader with you and getting your feedback.
Yes.
Yes.
I look forward to looking at it.
Okay.
Thank you, Gitanjali.